because very important. Guys, if you don't know, I just want to let you know, right? The survey is the only thing that helps us to report it to the government that we are doing good job, upskilling the people like everyone who are here. So please, it's very, very important for us. We don't do all these programs and everything for money, right? We do it for helping people to upskill. So I really, really need your 2-3 minutes of your time. It's a generic survey, right? It's very easy to fill. 2-3 minutes of your time, and I've put the survey link here: forms.office.s5bsbrtx2r. If you can quickly click that and finish the survey, at least we will have 9 people filled up the survey. Now we are 10, right? Filled up the survey, and we are good to go. And that includes Harsha, you as well, right? We need everyone to fill the survey, please. Okay. So the time starts now. I'm also going to fill it, and I want to make sure that we all fill this together. And please do that. Okay. So the link is in the chat. I'm starting to fill the survey now. I can walk you through, guys, if you want to. You have some doubts. I will share my screen. Who joined now? I think we have one more person joined. Hey, Samuel, how are you? Samuel, if you have not heard it, please click the survey link here. It's here, forms.office.com. This, right? And please fill the survey. And I'm starting to fill the survey. I just want to make sure we at least 11 of us finish the survey together. Okay. I'm just starting it as you see. Please go ahead and do it for yourself, please.
Okay, thanks, Kath.
Please.
Let me know once you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So this is our last session. So I'll do a quick recap of what we have done so far and also look at like what is planned for today. Okay, we started the masterclass with introduction to natural language processing with definition of what is NLP, what are its applications, all those things we started with. And for us to proceed with NLP, we had to ingest the data which is coming in, and we spoke about like what are the various sources that can be there, written speech. There are, as far as language data is concerned, you have tons of data, and as the volume has been increasing at an exponential rate, I would say. So how do we ingest those files? We saw how we can read a text file and get into you know the format with which like we can proceed with the model building activities, or before we go to model building activities, do some pre-processing of the file which is there. So we saw how we could read from single text file and then from multiple text files, different formats of files like CSV file or text files, those things we saw. And then we saw how we could search for patterns within the text file using regular expressions or regex. We saw how we could search with character patterns and quantifiers too, so that if you have to glean some information from the file, we can do that. And then we saw a little bit of text pre-processing with tokenization, stop word removal, and normalization. Basically, the idea was to get to simplify the input file so that it can be passed to a model appropriately depending on what the model would want to do. Say for example, stop word removal, you wouldn't want to remove the stop words if you're doing translation, but if you're trying to find a topic of a para, then you need to remove the stop words so that you can come to better conclusions. So we saw text pre-processing, and after that, now we are going to look at information extraction, which is planned for this week. And we'll also look at a small text classification exercise. So that is the model building exercise, which is like you can do a spam or a not spam classifications. That is what we can do. That's what I'm going to show today. So with that, I'll move quickly to information extraction. And information extraction, I'm going to cover part of speech tagging and named entity recognition. So I'll start with part of speech tagging. So we know that language has a lot of grammar, right? So this particular feature is what Spacy provides is to tag the parts of speech for various words. I'll show you the list of possible parts of speech. We can take this, and Spacy has a very simple way of doing it. We saw how we could we could load the English model and then create a doc object from which we could read the tokens. Same thing, we just attach another attribute. You'll get the part of speech from there too. So there are two levels of thing. High level you get, and then more granular level details is what you can get. Both are supported by Spacy. Why are we doing this? Because when we for some of the natural language processing exercises, we need to understand the grammar behind the language, right? So it's not possible for if you take word by word, then combination of words will convey a different meaning, and if taking it word by word will convey a different meaning. So for doing translation exercise, you should understand the source languages grammar too, right? So that's one of the reasons. And to last week we saw one of the ways of normalization as lemma, where we could simplify the words to its base form, and that is something which can be done with part of speech tagging. And other thing is processing raw text intelligently is difficult. Okay, this is what I was talking about, like splitting the text into useful word-like units will definitely help the model to come to better conclusions. So those are the reasons why we do part of speech tagging. With this, I'll move to how it is done in Python. So I'll import Spacy, and I've just given a text. I jumped into the swimming pool, okay, and then loaded the language model, created a doc object, and in this, like when you in the doc object, you also have a way to get part of speech using the POS underscore tag. So we can use that, and this is for getting the high level part of speech, and we can get a more granular part of speech with the tag underscore. So if you see what is the difference, you get for this line, I jumped into the swimming pool. What I have done is I've taken the word, the high level part of speech and the more granular part of speech. Both these things I have done. And if you see here, like it's pronoun, and here it categorizes that as a personal pronoun or not. Jumped, it says verb, but here at a lower level, it talks about verb and past tense or form of the verb which is being used. So you have both the high level and the low level part of speech tagging which can be done. And the way in a Spacy works is it can read based on the context. So here, if I'm saying I read every day, read is a verb, so it's a singular present verb, right? So that is also identified by the more granular part of speech tag. But if you change the same sentence to I read a book, here it's becoming a past tense. Even that it is able to identify. So you can identify these things and use it for your natural language processing for information extraction is something which we can do. So that's a brief introduction on part of speech tagging. I'll pause here for any questions. Okay, I'll take that as a no. Now I'll move to the next. Yeah, sorry, someone had a question.
Yeah. In a I mean, simple explanation of the part of speech tagging, like just summary.
Sorry,
Right.
I
Yeah, you
didn't
have
get that.
the part tagging, but I couldn't get it, so I want you to briefly go over it again.
I couldn't hear you properly. Can you please repeat or type the question?
So it is part of speech tagging.
Yeah,
I would like you to briefly go over it again very shortly.
go over it again. Okay, fine. So part of speech is part of grammar, right? So you have different parts of speech for the words, right? You have noun, you have verb, you have adjective, you have preposition, conjunction. Those things are there. Since we're dealing with text file and language content, so grammar plays an important role. So for information extraction, we might need to do part of speech tagging. So Spacy, the NLP library from Python which we use, provides an easy way to do the part of speech tagging. This can be used for better processing of the text file which we are getting. And I showed how this can be done. Like, you don't have to do anything extra apart from what we know before. We know how to create a doc object from the text, right? When we create a doc object, what it does is you can also use the uh, uh, POS underscore and tag underscore to get the high level part of speech and more granular part of speech tags. So what is the differences? Like high level, it's just going to identify whether it's like adjective or pronoun, but at a low level, it's going to say whether it's, say for example, if it's a pronoun, it's going to say whether it's a personal pronoun or not. Verb, it's going to say whether it was in past tense, present tense, those things are there. So I also showed an example where like the library is able to understand that this is going to be in, it's more of a generic statement, more the verb is used in its present tense form. And here it knows that going by the context, it knows that it's able to, it's being used in a past tense form. These two are the examples which we saw.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Shall I move to the next one? Named entity recognition. So here, what are we talking about is entities. What are entities? They're basically words or group of words that denote common things, and usually they are nouns. And named entity means they are usually proper nouns. Like for example, Google, name of a company. You have Sundar Pichai, Sundar and Pichai. So these are all named entities. And if you'll have to get some information from the text, like if you're looking for say a company review and you want to there are like tons of text with you, and if you want to get to areas where it's only where the review is talking only about your company, then you need to get the named entity recognition coming into play, right? So how it is done is using part of speech and dictionary of nouns. There are standard dictionary of nouns to determine the named entities. um, Part of speech is used to conduct the noun phrases. There is something called dependency calculation for the sentence. Like for example, what is the root word of a line, and then how the root word is linked with various other words in the line. And when we do that, it's going to say the relationship. Say for example, I read a book. I is the subject. Read becomes the root word, and what happens is from read you can go to I as a subject for that verb, and then a book will become the object of the verb. So using such relationships, I gave an example without a proper noun, but if you have proper noun there, you can find out like um, um, what is going to be um, the proper noun which you're going to talk about. That way you can identify the named entities in that text. So they use part of speech, dependency, and a dictionary of nouns to identify the named entities in a piece of text. So I'll go to the code to show how it can be done. So what happens is here, so same thing, ENTS is what we can use for getting the entities. So if you see, for example, I've just copied a function which I saw in one of the courses, how it is done. So if I have a doc object, then I'm using the ENTS attribute of the doc object to get the named entities. This is just a piece of code which talks about like what the named entity is, what is the label, that is what is the categorization of that named entity, and or the tag, and the explanation for that. So all these things are provided by Spacy. So I've defined this function and say I'm giving a line saying that Sundar Pichai is CEO. If I do that, then what happens is if I say show entities, it identifies like what are the named entities in that line. Say Sundar Pichai, it says it's a person. Google is an org. When you say person, like people, including fictional character, but Google is an org. So companies, agencies, these things are the thing. And if you see here, I have listed all the possible named entities which belong to like the various tags which are there and what are the descriptions. So if you use this, then the .ent attribute can give you the words, can glean the words which belong to any of these categories and give you uh, the named entities from a particular text, which you can use for doing your processing. This is a very brief intro about named entity recognition. Any questions about named entity recognition?
Harsha, if it's not able to identify any specific category, then how it is going to tag?
You might have to introduce that particular named entity. There is a way to introduce, say, for example, there is a new word which you want to, if there are new organizations which come up, right? So if you, if normally, and it's using a dictionary to find these things out, there is a way to add that as an entity.
Okay, so basically we have to
that
provide that as a data to the Spacy library so that it can
Yes.
understand. Okay.
Understand that, and then you can do the language processing.
And let's say if you forgot to add that and run that program, then is there a specific category?
It wouldn't it wouldn't identify. I'll show you an example. See, even if one of the ways it uses, since it's a proper noun, I think it uses the capital letter in the first letter being capital. I'll just change this to Google, okay? So without the caps. If I do this, okay, it doesn't recognize.
Okay, so it's completely, it won't show whether it's not recognized, it's completely removed. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So so far what we have done, if you see the summary, what we have done is like reading the text file and then searching for some patterns, doing a pre-processing of text, and then some text extraction which we want to do. So these things are all done. Now what we will do is we will take a labeled text data, okay, do some pre-processing, pass the information to a model, and see how it is performing in the development data, and in the training data, and in the test data. That is something which I would want to show. This is going to be a text classification example which I'm going to see. So far, whatever we have seen in all these sessions is only to prepare us for model building. There are several things which can be done, and a lot more complex models which can be done with NLP. I've taken a very simple model for explanation. Here we are only doing a text classification. That is, we take label data which has information like particular text is actually a ham or a spam. Spam meaning like you get a lot of spam emails, right? So in our Gmail there are different tabs which says primary. You have promotions. You also have like what is the other one? I forgot the name. So you have promotions, and it also filters out the spam messages and and pushes it to your spam folder, right? So social is the third one, I think. So you have the spam messages, which where there's a categorization of whether a message is spam or not spam, right? Spam or ham. So that is what we are going to do. For this, what I have done is I have labeled data, that is data uh, which is labeled as spam or ham. Based on this, I will train the model so that when I give a new line, it knows whether it is the new line is going to be a spam or ham. So this is a supervised learning, which I'm going to show as an example here. Before I get there, I'll also talk a little bit about feature extraction in text files, because we'll be using this when we are doing the model building. So when we say feature extraction, what are features for a text file is basically like the text, right, which is going to come in. You have 1 gram text or bigram or n gram text. When we say gram, it's number of words, like you do it with single word or a couple of words, 2 words, it's bigram, it's going to be those things. So it's the text which is going to be the feature in language processing example, right? So there are few ways of doing feature extraction. And in the code which I'm model building, which I'm going to do, I'm going to use a method called term frequency inverse document frequency. I'll come to that a bit later, but first I'll see a simpler method, like which is going to be bag of words, right? Bag of words is basically like, as I mentioned in one of the earlier classes, you have tokens, you put together tokens, you if they're like word-based tokens, you put together tokens, you get sentences put together will become paras put together will become documents put together will become corpus, right? So here we are saying like a visual representation is a group of documents and each document containing some text. So what is happening is when you say bag of words, what it does is it does a vector space representation of each word, how many times it's occurring in a document. So it's just list of words, and then you have the words occurring in that document. So if it's not occurring, then it is going to be 0. If it's occurring, you just have that. And this is a vector space. You create a matrix, 2-dimensional matrix, which contains this. This is called term document matrix. This is one way of doing feature extraction where you can pass this information to a model. Other way of doing it is one-hot encoding, which you might have heard of if you are exposed to machine learning dealing with categorical data, you might have heard of this, but I'll explain. If you haven't heard it, I'll mention this too. So what is going to happen is, like if you have a text, I've just taken a very simple example, like what I take in my coding example, the cat sat on the mat. So if that is the example, then if you look at the word, the is here 1, and then you mark it here as 1 wherever it's happening. The cat is going to be here. So this is one hot encoding in a document. So you'll have like what are the different words, and you'll have like if it is going to happen in a document, if it's present in a document or not, is what you will get. The third method, see, both these things are very simple methods, right? It's just giving the frequency of a particular set of words. Both these things don't talk about like if there are common words which are there, you need to reduce the weightage of those words. If there are like if you have like so an article which is going to be used more frequently in most of the documents, it doesn't talk about weightage for those things, right? So that's where you have term frequency inverse document frequency method, which can be used. It's a bit complex to explain, so I will not get into details, but I'll tell you the formulae will be a bit complex to explain, but I'll tell you at a high level what it does. So it takes term frequency inverse document frequency. It's actually, if you look at a collection of documents, say if term frequency is for a particular word, what it does is it takes the number of occurrences for that word, okay, and it's frequency, right? So divided by the total number of words in that document. So that is what it takes as term frequency. Say for example, if you say this document D1, okay, and you have like complexity is the word, right? So assume that it has only these words, a complexity, algorithm, entropy. Then the term frequency for complexity will be 2 divided by 2 plus 3 plus 1, which is going to be 6. So 2 divided by 6, 1 by 3, 0.33 will be the term frequency for this. What inverse document frequency does is for the same word, it takes across all documents what is the occurrence, and it applies a logarithmic scale and finds a number. Okay, why it is taken as inverse, and it takes an inverse of that and then applies the logarithmic scale. Why it takes inverses to even out common words. Like if the common words are going to be present in many documents, then the weightage for that has to be reduced, right? So that's the reason inverse is taken. And what it does is it applies a logarithmic scale so that it can match the same scale as the term frequency. Here we are getting it in decimal. So you apply logarithmic scale and then multiply these two, you will get term frequency inverse document frequency for a particular word. Okay. So this can be concluded and you can give this as an input to the model. Don't be worried about the complexity behind this. In code, you can do it very easily. There is scikit-learn library, which you will see, which provides all these things very easily. So I'll walk you through that. But at a high level, this is what it is. I've also there was a nice article in towardsdatascience.com. I've created a Word document of that article and I'm copying it to Teams folder. You can check, like there's a good explanation of term frequency inverse document frequency. So this is basically feature extraction for text file. So feature extraction would mean, like for a text file, it's going to be words. How you pass that to a model is like you vectorize it with a bag of words or you do one-hot encoding. But these are not conveying the importance of a word, and it's not removing the insignificant words. So term frequency inverse document frequency can be used for that. And we'll see how it is going to be used when we do the text classification. I'll pause here for any questions. It's a bit heavy topic and I have only touched the tip of the iceberg. So if you have any questions at a high level, please ask now.
So Harsha, the purpose of this feature extraction looks like to identify or tagging specific set of documents, right?
To identify the words, how the word distribution has been in a particular in a set of documents, so that you can pass it on. See, you can't pass the see model. All these are computational models are all mathematical, right? So mathematical models don't deal with words. They deal with what you conclude from those words collection, right? Summary of those words. So in an NLP project, this is the feature extraction is you're deriving a summary of how the words have been used in a document or a particular or set of documents. And that is what you need to pass to the model.
Okay.
So for that, say when you're talking about when you're doing machine learning, say you're giving data. I have slide to explain supervised learning, but I'll get to that. So supervised learning is basically you have labeled information with which you train the model, so that when you get new information, you can label that new information. So what happens is, like, say that your data contains information like gender of a person, male or female, right? You can't pass to the model a mathematical model male or female. You need to convert it to numbers. So if you're doing a one-hot encoding, then what you do is you create a column called is male. Okay, and then if a person is male, then what you do is you mark that as 1, and if the person is female, mark that as 0. So it's that 1 and 0 which will have to be passed to the model. You cannot pass the text male or female, and it can be any categorical variable, right? It can be like, say, you're dealing with the say age group of a person. You say that the person is an infant, toddler, child, or adult, or seniors. So we saw that in survey, right? So he's asking for the age group, different what age group you belong to. Those are all categorical data, and this you cannot pass as it is as a word to the model. You need to convert it to mathematical form and send it. So that is how you do it in a normal model building activity. And in natural language processing, we only have text, so you need to convert it into numbers and then pass it on to the model, and that is what we are talking about here as feature extraction.
Okay, makes sense.
Answered your question?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
So I have a question. Regarding term frequency, why do we care about term frequency for the model? Is it because if the term shows up multiple times, is that so we know it's important, or it could be something that's useless information, we can normalize it?
Yeah, this is for normalizing how you're passing the information. Just passing this information saying that this word occurred 2 times in this document is not a very simple method of doing it, right? When you pass such information to a model, it might not make sense to the model, and the results you get will also not be that good. Actually, in the example which I have, which I'm going to show, they have used term frequency and inverse document frequency. I took it from a Udemy course by Jose Portia. It's a very good, he's a very good teacher. Machine learning topics are very well, and even Python topics he explains beautifully. I subscribe to many of his courses. So the thing is, when he works it out, this example, he has taken the feature extraction without term frequency, just the word count, and he has passed it to the model. You see the result there. It is not as accurate as you pass it with term frequency TF IDF method. So it improves the accuracy of the model. Because see, even if you think logically, instead of just passing the information, you're basically giving some information to some computation for it to process and give you an output, right? And the information you pass is how you pass, and what you pass is important for that computation to be more accurate. So if you're just passing an information saying that these are the words which are happening, which are occurring in this document these many number of times, the computation logic will not know what is the significance of maybe a common word or some words which are used more frequently in a document. It will not know that difference. So we are adding a weightage for these things when we are using TF-IDF technique. And when you add that weightage and pass that information to the computation, that is the model, then it can give you more accurate results.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, then I'll quickly introduce you to some aspects of machine learning models like supervised, unsupervised, and particularly supervised classification method. Like what are the metrics we can use? I will introduce you to that and then take you to the code. Are there any more questions on this? I'll take that as a no and proceed for the theory part of the text classification before we get into the coding part. Okay. So text classification, basically classification itself is a supervised learning mechanism. When we are saying classification, what we are talking about is giving a binary output. That is what we call as classification. Say whether the usual example which is taken is whether a text message is spam or not spam. You say that like you do something called churn prediction. That is the person is going to churn out of a particular scheme or something like that. The output is going to be whether a person is going to churn out or not. So the output is going to be 1 or 0. That is a classification example. What is supervised classification? Supervised learning. I'll come to that a bit later. But and text classification, it can be done with any of the classification mechanisms, machine learning models, which whether it's naive Bayes or logistic regression or support vector method. These can be used for doing it. Before we get there, I'll quickly introduce you to what is supervised learning and what is unsupervised learning. So here it is a method of machine learning where the data contains input and output. Okay, what we call as dependent and independent variable. This could be words which might be difficult to understand. So I'll give an example. So the data which I have taken for today's session. Here, if you have the data, that is the message and the label. Okay, you have a message saying that go until Jurong Park, available only in Boogies and Great World, something like, it's got some French words or those things are there. This is a message which is a very normal message which is passed on from one person to another person. So it is not a spam. OK, so there are few things which are like, something like free entry for this. We get a lot of spam messages, right? So this data we know is going to be a spam. So what we need to notice here, it is labeled. That is, you have a message. You have a label for that message. You've identified whether it's going to be a spam or ham. When you pass this, when you have such data with which you train the model, and when you get a new message, you make the model predict whether it is going to be spam or ham. This is supervised learning. So I will go back to the slide. What we are doing is we have data which has got input and output, desired output. which we call as dependent. Dependent variables are the input variables. Independent variables are output, another term. But for now, you can just take it as input and output. So we know what is the correct output for a set of inputs. That is there. So you have two categories in supervised learning: regression and classification. So here, like spam ham classification, I called it a classification because it's discrete output. And I mentioned binary. It can also be, multiple classification. That is, if you have a picture, like you have trained a model to identify whether it's a cat or a dog or a tiger or a lion. So even that can be a classification example. It says whether it's going to be cat or dog, or it's going to be tiger, right? So that is also a classification. A simpler example is binary, whether it's spam or ham, or whether it's a person is going to churn or not. These are all a simpler form of classification, which is binary classification. Supervised learning can also be done for is also when you have continuous output, it is going to be regression. I will tell you what is the difference between continuous output and discrete output with an example. Discrete output, I've already given examples like spam or ham or picture classification. These are all discrete outputs. It says the output is going to be discrete. Okay. Continuous output is if you want to predict some value based on some parameters. A classic example which we can take is we know that Canada has a hot real estate market, right? So depending on various factors, you try to predict what is the value of a house. And you have this data already available. You have like various parameters for a particular unit, type of unit, whether it's got number of bedrooms, locality, something, and then you're trying to, and you have the price of those units. And if you're trying to predict for a new unit when it has a particular, say it is townhouse, it's got 3+ bedrooms, these many bathrooms, it's located in this place. With this information, what is going to be the price? If you're trying to predict that, that's going to be a continuous variable. It is not going to be discrete. It's not going to be price, which is going to be like 1 lakh, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 or something like that. It's going to be 150,000, 153,350 something. It's going to be continuous value, right? When you're trying to predict a continuous value, it's called regression. If you're trying to get discrete output, it's called classification. In classification, you can have binary classification where the discrete output is either 1 or 0, or you can have multi-class classification also. So this is supervised learning, and the methods you use for doing supervised learning are, linear regression, logistic regression, neural networks. These are all examples. Of course, there are other things too. Like the ones which I had listed here, support vector machine and naive-Bayes method to do that. So this is a type of machine learning, supervised learning. Before I go to unsupervised learning, any questions about this?
So the other methods that you listed are unsupervised?
Yes, the other method is unsupervised learning. There's also reinforcement learning. I'll not get into that. That's basically training something to get a desired output. But for now, I'll stay with supervised and unsupervised learning. Do you have any questions about supervised learning? Okay, I'll take that as no questions and I'll move to unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning is where you have data, but it is not with input or output. You have characteristics of a data and you're trying to make sense of the data. That is unsupervised learning. Say you have data like saying that, you have fruits and vegetables, and you have characteristic like color of the fruit, size of the fruit, shape of the fruit, and a few other details with which like you're concluding whether the fruit is going to be apple or orange or something like that. So you're basically clustering the whole thing. A classic example is segmentation of customers. Like you have a bank, for example, like they get details about earnings of a customer, what is the expenditure of a customer, what is the age group, what is the area he's working on, so that they can, with all these things, they segment the customers, saying that this is going to be the spending pattern of this segment of customers, this is going to be the spending pattern of this segment of customers, and they can appropriately offer schemes for that. Like if they have a customer who's going to be a spendthrift, then like what can be offered. Maybe you can offer a good credit card to him so that the bank can gain from those transactions. So you get data characteristics which are there, based on which you make sense of the characteristics and then group them. That is what you are doing with unsupervised learning. So examples are like clustering, and there's also another classic example is separating. If you get audio file from a party, like which contains it will contain noise, it will contain music being played in the party, it will contain people talking. So all these things, you have audio files. If you segregate the music part separately and then the speaking part separately, that is also an example for unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning, you don't have any output labeling that is done. You have characteristics with which, like, you try to make sense of the data. You group them into some number of groups based on what you want to achieve. Say, for example, if bank wants to achieve like segment customers, they know at a high level, this is what we can look at, and okay, I need 2 or 3 segments so that I can do few things. I can appropriately market my schemes to those groups. Then they'll do that based on some information they have about the customers. So this is unsupervised learning. So two types of machine learning: supervised and unsupervised. I've covered what these are, what are the examples for that, and what are the techniques which are being used. Any questions about this? Okay, I'll take that as a no. And I would like to, before I get into the coding part where we are doing the text classification, I will briefly introduce you to what is called as confusion matrix. The name is a bit like misleading, but it gives you clarity about how your model is performing. So what are we talking about? Error matrix, right? So whenever you build a model, you should also know what is that you're trying to achieve with the model. Say, for example, if you're trying to predict whether it is spam or not spam, you have labeled data, right? So what you do is you split the data into training data and test data. And the difference between these two is you use the training data to train the model, pass the information to the model, and make it learn like what can be spam and what cannot be spam. And you pass this information and then use the test data to check whether your model is working fine or not. Please remember, test data is also labeled. So you have the actual output, which is there, and you have the predicted output from the model which you have built. So that is what you're seeing here. You have the actual outcome and you have the predicted outcome. So this is called as confusion matrix, which you use for classification. Okay, for classification, and error metric is one of the error metrics which you can use is confusion matrix. The reason I'm introducing it here is I'll be showing how you can do it in the code and find like whether how good your model is performing. So if you see here, this is the actual outcome in the text in the test data. So you have the actual outcome saying that this is whether it's spam or not spam. This is the prediction from your model, what you're building. So it says spam or not spam. So wherever the actual outcome is supposed to be spam, your model predicts that out of 32 cases, it says 31 cases it's able to predict correctly, which is very good accuracy, right? And when it says not spam, okay, out of 18 cases, it is able to predict at in 13 instances. Not so high, but it's okay, decent type of thing, right? So if you look at it, this is what is called as confusion matrix, and there are a few terms which are associated with this. This is used for any classification model building metric. So false positive. So it's if you take spam as a positive outcome you're looking at, false positive is it's saying that it's wrongly identifying a not spam to be a spam. So it's false positive. This is false negative. From this, you can also work out accuracy of the model. It's very simple. So correct prediction divided by total prediction is what you can take. So correct prediction, if you see here, it's 88% because it is 31 plus 13, which is 44. Okay, total number of predictions is 44 plus 6, which is 50. Out of 50, it is able to predict correctly 44 times. So 44 cases it's able to predict. So its accuracy is 88%. We'll not get into precision, sensitivity, specificity. These are additional metrics. I've copied the slide. You can go through this to understand. But these are error metrics with which like you can evaluate a model. Say, why are we using this? See, you have different ways of building a model, right? I told you about like when you pass uh, information to a model, like you just do it with one hot encoding or bag of words. You predict you do the model training and then use this metric to see how accurate it is. You get the value from that, and then what you do is you do TF IDF processing and then pass it to the model. You will get your error. You will get your metrics from classification for that. That way you can compare which model is doing better. Earlier in the session, I mentioned the course, like the instructor had shown how TF IDF is giving you better results. It is with this metric he could show that this was giving better results. So you need to, as one of the if you had attended my previous masterclass on machine learning with TensorFlow, then I introduced what is a pipeline, and in that pipeline identifying the metric like I determining like how you will identify whether a model is doing well or not is very important. And this is for classification. This is one of the standard metrics which they use. So I wanted to introduce confusion matrix to you. Don't be worried about how this computation is going to take place in code. It's very easy. Your scikit-learn gives you very easy methods with which you can do. You can just write a line of code and you will get this output. We'll see that in the code. So any questions about supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and an error metric for classification, which is confusion matrix? Any questions about this before I go to the code? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So this is the data I'm going to use for building the model. So it is labeled data. It's got some additional information too, like what is the length of the text and then how many punctuations are there. This is also there. So this is the labeled data which I'm going to use for doing the text classification. Okay. So with that, what I will do is I'll import some of the libraries and then I read this data. This is actually, even though it is in Excel, it is actually a tab separated file. So I have used separation as tab for doing the collection, and I've copied it to a data frame, pandas data frame. And if you see a sample of the data frame, if you do the head, you will get the first five lines, right? So you will get that, and this is what you're seeing. If you see it in the Excel, it's this, right? It's just indexed it and it is giving you this 5 lines, right? So this is what it is giving, right? So and then what we are doing here is we are identifying like how many labels are there. So what is the count? So it is going to be hams are 4,825 and spams are 747. So just knowing what is the how many are there from the data which is given, and what we are going to do is we are going to split this data into test and train data. So as I mentioned, train data will be used for training the model. And after you've built the model, use the test data to check whether your predictions are correct or wrong. And for that, we'll be using the confusion matrix to know how well our model is doing. So you have another library called very popular machine learning library is scikit-learn, with which like it gives you tons of stuff to do with. So here I've taken the model selection. From that, it also gives you a way to split the data into test and train data. The typical splitters, they take 70-30%. 70% of the data which you have will be used for training the model, and then 30% will be used for testing the model. Here it is it's like here it's 33% is taken as the test size. So 66% is used for training the model. So there's a very simple method, like you identify, see, this is your message, right? So this is the independent variable or the input which we are looking at, right? And this is the output which we want to have. Okay, so what we are doing is we are labeling them as X and Y. So basically Y is equal to X into something, like you have a mathematical equation, right? So it's like that you're trying to determine Y. So that is what we are doing here. So we are we're taking the data and just identifying which is going to be the input and what is output. So input is given by X, output is given by Y. You split this whole thing into test and train. So X test, X train, Y train, X test and Y test. Scikit-learn gives you a very simple method of doing. You can use this and then get it to do. You say what percentage you want to maintain as test, and then you will get the train data and the test data. Use this for doing your model building. Before we get there, see, all this while we have been talking about pre-processing those things, right? So we need to do the pre-processing in the training data before we pass it on to the model. So there is, for this, like we spoke about stop word removal, tokenizing those things, right? So scikit-learn once again gives you a very simple method with count vectorizer with which like you can do that. So you create an instance of count vectorizer, and then you pass it on to the train data. OK, and then do the TF-ID transformation. OK, do it to the train data. Please note, we are not doing anything with respect to Y now. We are doing everything to the input variable. We are pre-processing before we pass it on to the model. OK, we do this, and then here I have I've used SVM as a method. I had explained that SVM is one of the methods of doing the text classifications, basically a classification thing. We can also use logistic regression. I've just taken an example. It's a model. I'll not get into the details of this because you'll need a lot of explanation for understanding support vector machines or logistic regression or how these things are done. For now, assume that this is the algorithm with which like you're trying to classify. So this is the model which I have taken. OK, and done this I've applied this model and I have used this for training what I had pre-processed as text, right? So here after doing the the tokenizing and stop word removal, I've also done here I have done the TF-ID transformation, and that TF-ID train data is what I'm passing as an input to the model, and I have the label here, right, from the train data, right? So it's going to be here we had split it into X train and Y train, right? So we had split it into train and test data. In the train data, we'll have input and output, right? So output is going to be Y train, right? So here I have from X train, I have pre-processed it and gotten it to X train underscore TF-IDF, and I have used a Y train. Using this, I'm fitting it into the model. Once again, scikit-learn gives you a very simple way of doing it. Once I build this, I'll come to this pipeline portion a bit later. I use the predictions. See here, I've built the model and I'm using that model to predict with the test data. So I had split the data into train and test. With the train, I built the model and I'm using the same thing, passing the inputs from the test data to see what the predictions will be. And these are predictions from the model, which means like I'm trying to get the output from the model, but we also have the actual output, right? So what we are doing is we are comparing it with the actual output. Y test is the actual output which we have, and we have the predictions which is predicted from the model, and using the confusion matrix, we are trying to find the actual output. Oh, sorry, I hadn't done this. Sorry. I'll do it from here itself. Okay. Okay, this I'll have to do. I'll come to the pipeline portion a bit later. So what I'm doing is I'm finding the actual output here. I have the actual output. I have the prediction. With this, I'm finding the confusion matrix. If you see here, the confusion matrix, you pass what is the actual output and what are the predicted outputs. It tells you what are the values which is working fine. So if you look at it, out of the total, only 19 are predicted incorrectly with the test data. The rest are all predicted correctly. So which is 1586 plus 234. It's correctly predicted whether it's going to be a spam or ham. If you look at it, other way of looking at this accuracy score, you've got almost 99% accuracy from the test data which we have provided. I'll briefly cover the pipeline portion now. So see what we need to understand is here in the train data, we are doing some transformation, right? So we are doing the feature extraction and we are doing the transformation. And in the test data input, we should do the same thing again and then pass it to the model to get the predictions. So there are several steps which are there. We need to write code for doing this again and again. So for that, scikit-learn provides what is called as pipeline. What you do is you define a pipeline saying that this is what I'm going to do. OK, and when you do this, what you when you define this is what is happening, you create that pipeline, pass on the train data there, do that to the train data, and then use that pipeline. OK, when you use that pipeline and do that and pass the test data to that, what will happen is it will here what is going to happen is it is going to apply the vectorizer first, and then it is going to apply the model and then give you the predictions. So if you have a series of steps which you need to do, you can use pipeline to club everything together, apply the same for the train data and test data to get the so that you don't have to write the code again for the test data. So here we did it for, say, we passed it on to the we passed this to the train data, right? So here we did we passed the train data here, and then we did the in feature we did the pre-processing, and then we did the feature extraction and then passed it on to the model, right? If we'll have to repeat the same thing for the test data too. Pipeline is a simpler way of doing it, and we need to because why we are doing it is like when we are training a model with a transformed pre-processed data, we need to do the same transformation pre-processing or pre-processing and transformation to the test data for the model to work fine and give the expected results, right? So that's what pipeline is, a simpler way of doing it. And that's what we are doing for doing the model building. So in this piece of code, what we have done is we have taken label data. It says, OK, this is the text. If this is the text, then this is a spam. If this is the text, it is a ham. We have examples which we have taken. Use these examples to train a model so that when we give new text, it can classify whether it is spam or ham. A real life example is you have Gmail where or any email service which pushes all the spam messages to your spam folder. This is a very simplified form of how things are being done in that processing. I've given you a real example how NLP can be applied. I'll pause here for questions. Lot of stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. The silence. I'll take that as a no.
You can be sure of that, Harsha. Because you keep taking silence as no, we are silent. That means we understand what you're saying.
Okay. So with that, I'll come to the end of I've come to the end of this masterclass. So thanks for your participation. I also mentioned that I'll give you some links or online resources which you can use for learning more. You can okay, Karim, I'll answer your question. So you can look at a few of the sites. Udemy has a good set of courses, and as I mentioned, like I'm a big fan of Jose Portilla, and his courses I like a lot. He has a lot of Python courses and machine learning related courses. You can do that. That is good source. And I personally use something called Analytics Vidya. It's in India. They reached out to me a few years back when they saw me completing few Coursera machine learning courses, and from then on I've been in touch with them, and I'm doing I'm also learning NLP from some of the Analytics Vidya courses, and they have a very good way of introducing the topic and making you do a few things with real data. So that is another thing which I would recommend. Coursera has good set of courses for NLP, and of course after you do all these things, you can try your knowledge by taking up some Kaggle competitions. There are several websites which have like machine learning competitions, but Kaggle is definitely one of the oldest and very popular ones. So you can look at taking that. So these are some of the recommendations I have for NLP. Machine learning is an ocean. It's like it's a lot of stuff, lot of topics are there. NLP itself is a small ocean, and you have other methods also. So they are saying, everyone is saying that we have just scratched the surface in this area. And the way they've built applications, we can see them coming in when you have like Facebook suggesting in a photograph, this is the person for tagging, or we are all used to Alexa now, voice commands. If you see, all these things have happened in the last 4 or 5 years, right? So there's been a huge proliferation of using of machine learning applications. So NLP is a prominent area. So my goal was to introduce you to some of the things with which you can build further. The idea was not to convey complete NLP, and it is not possible for me to. Because it's an ocean. So I introduced you to NLP. That's the reason it was termed as Introduction to NLP. I hope you got some of the ideas and you can build on this and take this forward. Thanks a lot. And I'll answer Kareem's question now. Okay. Video, PPT, and notebook for this session. All the three are copied to the Teams folder, Kareem. If you have access to Teams folder, you will have it there.
Yeah, and there is an instruction in the chat, right? How to join the Teams. Please, copy it and paste it, and we'll be happy. Because of the privacy reasons, we can't send these presentations and everything out. You have to be having the access to Testoper Community's Teams, so you can, get access to those. Just because of the privacy and legal reasons. There's no other reasons. Then again, Harsha, are you done from your end? I just want to.
Yes, I'm done.
So first of all, I wanted to thank you all because you took time to come and learn, right? That itself says something. From Testoper community point of view, I mean, that's what we are all about. Taking time out of our day-to-day routines, personal, official, whatever you name it as, dedicating the time to continuously learn. I mean, that's what the Testoper community is all about, and I really thank you for doing that. And a couple of asks I have. Please always look out in Eventbrite, all our programs, and if something is interesting to you, please join. And second, become a volunteer of Testoper, because end of the day, all the program that is delivered are by the volunteers. Harsha is a volunteer, I'm a volunteer, everyone is volunteer. So if you're interested to join us and advance the learning culture, continuous learning culture, and the mission of Testoper community, which is enabling everyone to become a workforce of future on the tech ecosystem, you're welcome to join. And you know my email address, testoper@testoper.com, or you can reach out to programs@testoper.com, right? So we'll be happy to get you onboarded, help us with training other individuals on experts and so on, with your expertise and so on. So with that, I like to really close this session officially by thanking tons and tons of thanks to Harsha, our very famously called as professor within our Testoper community. And I'm really glad that a person like Harsha is part of this movement that would make a difference in a number of lives. And I'm pretty sure everyone who joined this session in some or other way, we would have made a difference. Even if you have learned one word, natural language processing, even not anything inside that, it is still, from our point of view, make a difference to you because you have been introduced to a topic which can, depending upon your course of future, the steps that you would take make a difference, right? So with that, I'll close this session officially. Those who have not filled the survey, the link is available in the chat. Do not forget to do that because that's the only takeaway. And the way of you saying thanks to all our effort and thanks to Harsha and me and fellow volunteers who have put together this program. So with that, guys, you all have a wonderful weekend. Keep in touch. Those who are looking for a job, send the resume to me. When there is a right opportunity, I'll refer it to a number of partners that we have. With that, take care, guys. Bye-bye to everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.